Guten Morgen. Hallo, ich bin's wieder, Hessedwell. Today's lesson is a bit of a grammar lesson. Not my favorite thing to talk about because normally in class we'd be doing tons and tons of input, and then I could spend a little bit of time talking to you about grammar. But I think after reading a lot of the writings that I've seen the past week or two, that it deserves a bit more focused attention, and we can take a look at it here. So today we're going to review das Perfekt. So das Perfekt, it's a tense in German. It's what we use when we're commonly talking about things that happened in the past. So, Beispiele vom Deutschunterricht, examples from class. You've heard me say these things before. Was hast du am Wochenende gemacht? Ich bin zu Hause geblieben und ich habe Videospiele gespielt. Und du? Am Samstag bin ich in den Park gegangen. Ich habe Fußball gespielt. Am Sonntag haben wir zusammen gekocht und gebacken. Ich bin um 10 Uhr ins Bett gegangen. So these sentences are all in the perfect. Was hast du gemacht? Ich bin geblieben. Ich habe gespielt. So there's key elements that we need to look at when we're constructing sentences in the present perfect. So here I've done the words in bold. They are your helping verbs, either sein or haben. Okay, so sein, they're never going to look like sein. We're going to go over the conjugations of these, but you're always going to have one of these two verbs. The underlined verbs are what's called your past participle. This is the part of the part of the sentence that carries the meaning of the action you're talking about. So gemacht, was hast du gemacht? What did you do? Ich bin geblieben. I stayed. Ich habe gespielt. I played. Ich bin gegangen. I went, played, etc., baked. So the past participles are really carrying your meaning, while these guys are just helping. Hast, been, etc. So common past participles, you kind of learn and absorb them as you get exposed to them. I know you know all genug gespielt, gegessen, gehabt, all those things, but we can always look them up, and I'll go over how to do that later. So every time I start talking about this topic, I get kids asking, why are there two helping verbs? That's so confusing. And my answer is always the same. I try not to spend too much energy wondering why that is, but kind of just accept that it is, and spending my energy instead on looking at the differences and how we can discern between the two. So whenever we use sein, the by itself, when it's not a helping verb, sein means to be. Ich bin, du bist, etc. So this helping verb comes in when we're using verbs that indicate change of state or location. Sounds a little abstract, but here are some examples. They have fewer overall verbs, but much higher frequency, meaning most German verbs aren't going to take sein, but the ones that do come up a lot, like went, stayed, etc. These are verbs like gehen, kommen, bleiben, werden, fliegen. Ich bin gegangen, wir sind gekommen, ihr seid geblieben, ist geworden, wir sind geflogen. Haben is used with basically everything else. Grammatically, we always talk about haben as being the helping verb when the participle takes a direct object, meaning I'm doing something to something else, or the person in the sentence is doing something. So, for example, verbs like spielen, I play something, haben, I have something, essen, I eat something, trinken, I drink something, mögen, I like something. So these, haben is used with things that we can do to other things, and sein is used for things that indicate change of state or location. Of course, language being like it is, there are always exceptions that aren't always going to make perfect sense. For example, bleiben, we're not really going anywhere. We're staying where we are, yet it takes sein. Okay, so let's take a look at some sentences with haben. So in the present tense, we are always having to change the conjugation of the verb based on who's doing the action. Ich esse Sushi zum Abendessen. I eat sushi for dinner. Markus isst eine Pizza. Markus eats a pizza. Notice I use a different form. I don't say Markus esse. I say Markus isst. Meine Eltern, my parents, essen Spaghetti. Again, a different form because different people are doing the action. Ich esse, Markus isst. This is conjugation 101. Was isst du? Okay, when we write a sentence in the perfect, we're changing the conjugation of the helping verb based on who's doing the action. And then the participle, that word at the end, does not change. So here are these same sentences in perfect. Ich habe Sushi zum Abendessen gegessen. Markus hat eine Pizza gegessen. Meine Eltern haben Spaghetti gegessen. Was hast du gegessen? So what used to carry the meaning over here, eat, which was changing all the time, now stays the same in its past participle form, gegessen. Instead, we change our helping verb, habe, hat, haben, hast. I ate sushi, Marcus ate pizza, my parents ate spaghetti. Notice when I translate these into English, I'm not saying I have eaten dinner or I have eaten sushi. I feel like that can confuse people. So if you translate it into simply thinking I ate, thinking of haben gegessen as a road marker for saying this is something that already happened. Because in English, we have different tenses that affect different situations. In German, it's a little bit simpler, even though it seems more complicated. So think of this as I ate, not necessarily I have eaten. We don't really distinguish those in German. So a really quick review about conjugation in general, and the idea of weak versus strong conjugation. So in English, we have what's called a weak conjugation system. For example, the verb to go, I go, he goes, we go, they go, you go. Almost every form of the verb to go stays the same, except for one. So we have a weak conjugation. And it's also regionally and dialectically acceptable in many contexts for people to say he go or she go. You've heard that, you know what people are trying to say. I'm not saying that's grammatically correct, but people say it, right? So it's very weak. In German, we almost always are going to change our endings based on who's talking or who we're talking about. Ich gehe, geht, wir gehen, sie gehen, du gehst. So that's what we mean when I say it's a strong conjugation. We have to always change these endings. Now, can you just say ich gehen, gehen? Will people still know what you mean? Probably, but you're immediately going to stick out as a beginning German learner because this is really one of the fundamental aspects of the language. So can people understand that you say I go when you say ich gehen? Yes, you can be understood, but for longer sentences, it's going to get real messy because this helps us distinguish who is talking about what and who's doing what in a sentence. So our normal endings. Again, I could do a whole video just about conjugation, but we're kind of blitzing through it right now. Ich, you put E at the end. This is after you chop off the en of your infinitive. So ich gehe, du gehst, geht, wir gehen, ihr geht, sie gehen. These are our standard conjugations for present tense verbs. E-S-T-T-E-N-T-E-N. So the two verbs you must memorize for this is haben, of course. Ich habe, du hast, Bob, Susie, sie, es. Whenever you're talking about any other person other than yourself, but it's one person, whether you're using the pronoun or their name, hat. Wir haben, ihr habt, and finally, sie haben. Also, the formal you, sie, doubles up on this conjugation. So whether I'm saying you or they, it looks the same. For sein, ich bin, du bist, sie, Bob, Susie ist, wir sind, ihr seid, sie sind. Again, this is the verb sein, the helping verb sein. In present tense, it means to be. I am, you are. If these were just present tense sentences, ich bin 13 Jahre alt. Du bist ein Freund von mir. Ist nett. Wir sind in Deutschklasse. Ihr seid glücklich. Yeah, this just means to be. But when we put them in past tense sentences, they kind of lose their meaning. So make sure you go over these conjugations very carefully and practice them because they're very important when forming the past tense. So here are some, So here are some examples using a sein verb, not a haben verb. Am Montag gehe ich zum Supermarkt. Meine Mutter geht in den Garten. Mein Vater geht in den Keller. Meine Brüder, plural, gehen Radfahren. Wir gehen nach Hause. Now we're going to change that to past tense. Am Montag bin ich zum Supermarkt gegangen. Meine Mutter ist in den Garten gegangen. Mein Vater ist in den Keller gegangen. Meine Brüder sind Radfahren gegangen. Wir sind nach Hause gegangen. So again, the gegangen now stays the same, and it always comes at the same place, the end of the sentence. What's changing now is our conjugations of sein. Wir sind, du bist, ich bin, etc. Okay? Notice these always fall in the same place. Whether I'm starting with a day or with a person, this is always going to come in second position. Now, a quick note. In reality, Germans speak a mixture of what's called Perfekt and Imperfekt. Perfekt is what we're talking about now. Ich bin gegangen, ich habe gehabt. Imperfekt is technically a different past tense that's used mostly in writing. However, many imperfect forms have percolated into daily speech just for ease of use. And these are very high frequency verbs. You've heard this before. Wo warst du am Wochenende is a lot easier than saying Wo bist du am Wochenende gewesen? Where were you on the weekend? You know what I mean right away. Okay? Ich war zu Hause und ich habe gebacken. This is typical. A German may even mix tenses within the same sentence. I was home and I baked, right? So why is this one a little easier? Well, that's a whole another lesson, but imperfect is formed with only one word. We change the word itself rather than having the helping verb. And you're probably asking yourself, why don't we just use this all the time because it's simpler? That's a great question. We'll probably never know the answer to. But Germans tend to mix the two. Ich habe nicht gespielt, ich hatte keine Zeit. I did not play, I had no time. Dylan konnte nicht kommen, weil krank war. Imperfect is very frequently used with modal verbs like can, should, want, must, because these are extremely awkward to say with perfect. For example, would say, Dylan hat nicht kommen gekonnt, weil krank gewesen ist. It's very awkward to say, so generally we default to saying Dylan konnte, he could not come because he was sick. So when you hear this, it's not wrong, it's just what native speakers do. And you're encouraged to do it too. So a little quick side note is, I'm very discouraging of people to use online translators. Not because I think they're inherently evil, I think they can be useful in certain contexts, but they don't help you learn very much. So I'm going to show you an example of how to use an online dictionary rather than a translator to improve your writing. Find those words you're looking for. Because what I want to get out of the habit of is either A, just slapping in English, or B, I'll just put this into a translator, the whole sentence. So I want to try to give you the tools to improve your writing and look up words on your own. So some strengths of using an online dictionary. You get detailed information about a word, and you get a lot of possibilities through synonyms that are offered, and you can maybe see different ways of expressing yourself. Some weaknesses, it's not great for phrases or idiomatic expressions. So for example, if you want to say, wow, I was really blown away, well, you're not going to be able to type in blown away necessarily into an online dictionary and get an exact phrase. Sometimes you have to rethink what you're trying to say in a simpler way to find the right word in German. So someone was blown away. They were really surprised. They were really impressed. So you want to look up the simpler word to really get at what you're saying. And you have to know a little bit about the language to make a good use of a dictionary. So let me show you one of my favorite examples. So I'm going to pop out of this really quick. Oh, before let's go over my tips. So tips for using an online dictionary. You always want to try to look up the base form of the word. So as we sit down to do a writing, we might think, she sees. So you want to type in sees. Well, it may not give you exactly what you're looking for. So for a verb, for an action word, you always want to think to put the word to in front of it, like to see, to eat, to have. That is almost always going to guarantee that you're going to get the correct verb form first. And for nouns, you want to use the singular form of a noun. So you want to look up berries, but just look up berry because it's also going to give you the plural form. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So don't look up reads, but to read. Make sure you're using the correct part of speech. So using an online dictionary helps you manage that. And I'm going to show you a common mistake. When you look up a noun, it's always going to show a der, die, das, and the nouns will be capitalized, and it will also offer a plural form. Verbs will be lowercase and usually end in en. So my go-to example is the word can. So maybe you forget, you want to say, he can speak German. Can. So when I type in can, I get can. The very first entry I get is die Dose. Die Dose is a metal thing that you put stuff in. I know it's a noun because it's got an article and it's capitalized. What I'm really looking for is to be able to. Now it gives you both dürfen and können, right? Dürfen really means to be allowed to, and können means to be able to. We know in English we change these up. We use these interchangeably. Can I go to the park? Yes, you can. May I go to the park? Yes, you may. The meaning is heavily context-based. So, but I want to show you some more things about the online dictionary while we're here, especially Leo. Leo's my favorite. I always come to Leo. If you click this little table button, it's going to show you everything you want to know about the word. So, the declination, der, die Dose, these is all the grammatical cases. That's other lessons. We can talk about what these mean, but if you want to know, nominative is the base form, the gender of the noun, die, der, die. If all you ever use the dictionary for is to find the gender of a noun, it's extremely useful for that. I mean, think when I was in college, I had to look it up in a paper dictionary. At least you have the internet, you get the results in less than a second. When you look up a verb, you're going to get a lot more information because of all the different tenses and moods we can use. So, ich darf, I may, du darfst, you may. Präteritum, that's what I was calling imperfect earlier. It's also called Präteritum. I was allowed, you were allowed, he was allowed, etc. These are all sorts of different advanced tenses and moods that we'll get to later in German, but all the information you could need here. Now, dürfen is kind of a special case. Let's look up a different verb like to read. Okay. Notice here, these are little idiomatic phrases, examples. Look at what the heading is. What you really want is the verb, to read. Etwas lesen. Okay, aha, here's my past participle, gelesen. The past participle is always going to be list right on the front page with the verb itself as the second form. A note, this is the third person imperfect or Präteritum form, and this is the past participle. Again, we can look at this. Ich habe gelesen. This also tells you if it takes sein or haben. Ich habe gelesen, you read, he read, er hat gelesen, wir haben gelesen, etc. So you have all this information here just by looking it up. Okay? So use your online dictionary. It's very useful. You can even hear them pronounced. For example, if I want to hear this read, lesen, there we go. Okay, so it's good for pronunciation practice. Don't just type in the first thing and look at it and get the first entry. You have to think about what you're looking at. All right, so that was my little aside about using an online dictionary. Better than a translator if you know what you're doing, and you're going to learn more. So let's skip ahead. I want to wrap up by showing you how to put a German sentence together in the past. So again, we're talking about the perfect, present perfect, commonly spoken past. So I've created a little diagram for you down here. What I want this to indicate, there's green zones and red zones. Things in the green zones can move around. Things in the red zones are fixed in place. So for example, as you're putting your sentence together, you want to think about who is doing the action. Wer. Okay. What is the action being done? What's my verb? And wann. When is it happening? Now, in the future, in the past. Okay. So let's take a very simple sentence. Like I want to say, Hans bought. Okay. So I want to say he bought something. So who is doing it? Wer is Hans. What is being done? He bought something. Hat gekauft. These two things are in red because they cannot be moved. Hat gekauft. Gekauft has to come to the end. Hat has to come what we call in second position. Okay? So these things cannot move. No matter how I formulate the sentence, these things have to stay where they are. Hans can actually move here. I'll show you what that looks like on the next page. Hans hat am Samstag ein Hemd gekauft. Hans bought a shirt on Saturday. Now in English, we tend to have one way of saying a sentence. In German, we can mix it up a lot. I could have said, am Samstag hat Hans ein Hemd gekauft. So a few rules to keep in mind. Hat, your helping verb, your conjugated verb, whether it's present or perfect, has to come in second position. Your participle always comes at the end. The person doing the action of the verb, or the thing, or maybe it's a thing, has to be next to, but it does not necessarily have to come first. So let me show you what that looks like on this page. So I'm going to change the sentence slightly. Am Samstag bin ich ins Kino gegangen. So now I've started with am Samstag. Again, bin stays where it is. It cannot go from second position. Gegangen comes at the end. Ich is still next to bin, so we're good. Ins Kino. On Saturday, I went to the movies. To the movies went I on Saturday, right? So these two things are still fixed. And now I've moved this around. So ich can come here or it can come here. Here's a third option. Am Samstag bin ins Kino ich gegangen. What do we think about this? Let's check. We can start with this. That's fine. Bin is in the right place. Gegangen is in the right place. However, ich needs to be next to this verb, either to the right or to the left. So this is not good. This is not what we want. Okay? Now, as you get further and further in German, you hear and read more text by native speakers. You may hear breaking and bending of these rules. Doesn't mean those people are wrong, but you really have to learn the rules before you can start to bend them. So I hope this has been helpful. There's a lot of information here. Please go back and review sections that are relevant to you. I want you to put some thought in when you're putting your sentences together. We can't just sit down and do stream of consciousness like we do in English. Or maybe we start that way and then we clean it up with some intentionality. So thanks for watching. Danke schön fürs Zuschauen. I'll be back at you soon with another grammar lesson. Tschüss.